camera lined up.
Oh, you want me to stop moving around?
Looks good right there. Stay.
Sit.
That was a mess with your move, but I'll move a little closer to you.
All right. We'll chill.
Yeah. Just put my head over your shoulder. Don't tell the governor.
We just broke some kind of rule, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He did another press event this afternoon.
Did he?
We don't know what he was saying.
Oh.
Yeah,
I didn't see
I
it.
just watched it, and it was there's I think there were 8 more counties added to red, so 60%.
But Trumbull got moved back to orange.
Well, they're off the watch list because they were on
Yeah.
their way to purple, and now they're off the watch list.
Okay,
So
okay. Yeah, I heard they went backwards.
Tides
My wife
might be
was telling
going out, but anyway, 60% of Ohio's population's under red now because it's Columbus, and
me. Yeah.
so.
Like some of those rural areas got to be thinking like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Joe and Doug Show. We're glad that you're here with us. We have a special guest, and we're going to be talking all things law of attraction. I know I've been gleaning from Joe over the last year through some of this, read some books that he's recommended, and really see how it crosses over faith lines for me. But we're going to talk all things law of attraction. So, Joe, why don't you introduce our guest and kind of the topic?
Barb Ewing is here with us, and she saw that we were talking about this and said that there's some interest. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah,
Got
there
some
is,
interest.
absolutely.
And I've followed you for quite a bit of time, and you've sort of got your heels in this one as well. From a different direction. You're centering yourself and helping other people, guiding them into keeping them centered. And so why don't you introduce yourself and what your interests are in this department?
Sure. I'm Barb Ewing. I'm CEO of the Youngstown Business Incubator. We do both technology and traditional business. And we're one of the growing forces in downtown and helping to rebuild the Mahoning Valley. And that's very much how I am seen and how I see myself. But all of this plays into that part of my life, because as I think about the things that we want to do at YBI, when I think about the things that I want to do with my own personal life, the law of attraction and visualizing what you want and how you're going to get there is very much a part of my story. So when I saw that you were interested in having a conversation about this, it felt like a great time to share that and to open up a little bit more about it.
Beautiful.
It's not something
you kind of make impossible things happen. And you know what I mean? When people say, well, how did you do that big, heavy load? And this is kind of the mechanics behind it. Where you have ways of controlling yourself. Now, I listen and kind of pay attention to what you do and help with other people about, going inward and that centering part. So where's your expertise coming from when you've guided people, quite a bit of people through this process?
So just to fill in the blanks there for anybody who isn't following me on Facebook, in bad weather, not when it's sunny and warm and I'm outside all the time, but during bad weather, I try to do a nightly meditation on Facebook, and I may in the fall start to look at doing some other platforms as well. And then especially during the earlier stages of COVID, when everybody just felt like we were in a panic, I was doing some centering meditations on Thursday night. And again, I hope to get back into that. I really feel a calling to help people find their spiritual self. I am a child of religions. I don't necessarily ascribe to any single religion. I do a lot of reading, a lot of study, trying to understand different perspectives and how different cultures, different populations really understand the universe and the laws that govern it. But I also pull science into this. And for me, trying to figure out where science fits into this is as interesting as all of the rest of the discussion, because I don't think they're separated. If you listen or read any of the work around Bohr's theory of studies and how they're influenced by the observer, and the classic story of Schrodinger's cat, and the outcome of an experiment is going to be determined by the mindset of the observer. The person who's running the experiment is going to affect the outcome. There have to be ties here. I mean, this universe seems to be made of of spider webs, and I think that they all play together. And we have been trained and train ourselves to think of them as separate entities, but I don't think they are. So I pull everything together that I can find and try to make sense out of it in my head. And if that helps somebody else make sense out of it, then that's great. And if they don't accept what my thinking are, that's fine too.
A fellow truth seeker. I love it. Yeah. And so the manifesting side, Doug and I have been working together quite a bit on involving the, separating and working on the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. A lot of people have it reversed, where they do most of their heavy lifting in the conscious mind, and they don't let their subconscious mind really go blanks and it's not doing anything. Reversing that and putting all the really important stuff on the capacity of that part, that part of the mind. It's interesting that you used some of those examples. When you really start digging into this, you lose a lot of faith in like reality and perceptions and how fake this stuff really is, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's just, it really does start to feel like you're in the Matrix when you start to dig into this. And
she should be on conspiracy theory. Yes. That's true. Yeah, conspiracy theory. We are in the Matrix.
He loves setting me up for those too, because I take the bait every time.
And the funny thing about this is that I've never once thought about the subconscious mind and its role in all of this. But today, while I was eating lunch, I was just trying to put together some thoughts for this. So I decided that I'd listen to a YouTube video. I've never searched manifesting on YouTube. It's just not something that I do. But the one that I picked that was only 10 minutes was all about the subconscious mind. So it all plays together.
Yeah.
You can't, at some point, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah, and some people who buy into this, they want it to be sort of like magical. Like they want to buy it to make it something happen. It's really not that. It's, taking control of yourself, knowing what your limitations on your brain is, programming yourself in a certain way so that you just have more capacity than people who aren't doing this. It's like exercising just mentally.
I would think so, yeah. I like to include the element of magic in it, but
okay.
Yeah. But I don't think it's I don't think it's necessarily the Harry Potter type of magic.
Sure.
It's not like that. But I think that I do think that there are probably rules to the universe that we don't understand, that aren't visible to us at this point, because we don't have the technology, we don't have the capacity to really understand it. If everything truly is vibration, and we are able to change how the world plays out by changing vibrational levels, I think that's magical.
Sure.
I don't think that that's
well,
separated
the perspective
from
that you can
science.
do to sort of explore that is, if you look at the rate that things are happening, like our experience and perception, we're looking at things at the 30 frames a second. That's our perception. Things that exist might be operating at much faster speeds or much slower speeds. So it's hard to interpret things like that. An ant's life maybe 6 hours, and it's hard for us to comprehend that. But to the ant's perspective, it was 60 years. So when they look at us, when this really slow, moving thing that doesn't communicate the same way that it does, that kind of lends it where that would seem magical to that little ant, just because it's so out of the possibility of the realm of perspective.
Yeah, it really is all perception.
For sure.
We come to this world perhaps we come as a blank slate, perhaps we don't, but you are fed information, and we're all fed such different information that even if, within a family, you don't have three children who have the same experience.
No, you expect these clones to come out, and they never do.
Right.
Who are you, and where did you come from? I think it's so interesting, the parallels, though, because you and I talk about this, and you come at this from a very secular kind of standpoint, and it's led you to a place of faith. And I'll hear you talk, and I'll go, yeah, but I know the Bible verse that goes with that. I wouldn't use the language of subconscious or conscious. I would talk about faith and things that are unseen and that kind of dynamic. And as you and I've kind of journeyed, and you alluded to the science and even the spirituality side of things, and I just find these parallels. And she talked about webs, and I think for a lot of people, they want to just write this off because it doesn't fit in whatever paradigm they're most comfortable with. Yes. So for me, being in a spiritual field, so to speak, being a pastor, some people are like, well, that sounds a little weird, or it's too sciencey, or it doesn't quite fit, or they don't have the words for it, and so we just write it off. Or you have somebody that goes, well, that sounds a little too hocus pocus. I'm about the facts and the science. How do you cross that chasm with people that, or do you not bother? You just kind of keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to attract who you attract?
I think probably I'm more in line with if somebody's not open to it, there's little point in having a conversation.
That's true.
I recently saved a picture on my iPhone that says if somebody is determined to sleep, don't try to wake them. And it feels like the right approach with this. I do understand to a lot of people it seems very woohoo. That's
Sure.
Very new age. And even when I'm doing my meditations, I try to give people that the opt out, not from the standpoint that I don't want them to do it, but if they're not comfortable with the term manifesting, then just translate that into prayer and to regurgitate it into the language that they are comfortable with. But I think it is all one. I don't know that there is a single path to the truth, and you're going to find your way there sooner or later.
And if they're not seeking this, they're not going to get value out of it anyway.
Sure,
So
sure.
just, blindsiding someone with something like this. I mean, there's a lot of people that will dabble in it because it seems cool that you have this power that you can make things come out of thin air, right?
Yeah, like
but
you
they
got a
don't
wand or
really want to
something, sure.
invest in it to see how that happens.
Because but it does on a. It's funny as I've listened to Joe talk about it. I've had folks say, well, that's kind of new agey, and in Christian circles, like certain things are off limits. But I'm like, hold on a second, let's walk back. And I've said this to Joe. We believe God created the universe. So wouldn't it be not that far-fetched to say, well, perhaps he put some laws in place, perhaps he does some things, and maybe our language is such that we talk about faith and that sort of stuff. But I think there's probably some hard wiring to this. You talk about subconscious versus conscious mind. I think helping people overcome those biases sometimes that they come into things with, to kind of open themselves up to, hey, there are things here that I don't understand. If I'm always the authority on everything, we're in trouble. And I have to be willing to and humble enough and teachable enough to go, all right, obviously I don't understand everything, so let's have a conversation. And that's where I think you and I really hit it off. Was you kept saying to me, it's so cool that you're willing to dive into this. But there's so many people that it's always conscious mind, never subconscious. It's always, if I can't put it on a spreadsheet and understand it, they're never going to get to that spot. How do you introduce somebody to the topic? I know you talked about language a little bit, but how do you take somebody and expose them to it in a creative way that maybe is going to pique their interest?
Well, one of my favorite sayings is, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So you tend to pick up on people's openness to it, and I'll respond better to that than to just walking up to somebody and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about manifesting.
Yeah, sure.
But I do try to be open. And for $9.99, you can subscribe. I tend to use language that is either too colorful for the radio or very down to earth, but I do try to be open about it. So at work, we talk about manifesting miracles every day, although, again, a little more colorful than that.
Sure.
And I think that our accountant, who's a wonderful soul, but probably pretty practical, when we first started talking about manifesting miracles every day, didn't really believe it. But then, especially as we've gone through COVID and other difficult times, we'd get to the point in the month where bills needed to be paid, and we were waiting for that payment. For a long time, we were waiting for a lot of payments. It seemed like our accounts receivable were very healthy. And, the checks would always appear. And finally, Tom was just, I think he just finally threw up his hands and was like, okay, it seems to work. I can't explain it, but it seems to work. But we were never heavy-handed about it. We just talked about it more as a joke or lightheartedly. Sure. But I don't try to hide it. It's just, something that if people are open to it, I'm happy to talk about it. Yeah. We opened a 65,000 square foot manufacturing facility 3 years ago that is ahead of schedule in terms of being filled up.
Awesome.
And it's right behind our building. And when I would drive by it before we owned it, I would drive by it and I would tell myself, we're going to own that building someday, and it's going to be a manufacturing facility.
Does sound familiar.
Yes.
And,
that's what I've been doing with my house right now.
Yeah. And at one point, I realized we own that building and it's a manufacturing facility. And you have those moments when you're like, man, it didn't happen. It's not like it didn't happen with work. I tell everybody all the time, you can't expect the universe to deliver something on a platter.
Right.
You have to put work into it.
Absolutely.
But you also have to be open to the possibility of it. If you don't believe that it can happen, then it's not going to happen.
Faith is a huge part of it.
All right, so the mechanisms, and let me explain
Sure.
some of this. He and I talked about this last night, so I'll engage you. I'll look at you. You're probably familiar with this part, but this is part of the subconscious training. Remember, I like to reverse engineer things. When something happens, I want to know how it functioned, what I had in it, what it had in it, and go from there. So there's an example of a guy wanted to get close parking spots, and he was a guy that said he just decided that from now on he's going to find the close parking spots. He's tired of not having it, so he's going to do the close parking spots. And so the engineering, how this happened, well, of course he started saying it, and then he started getting close parking spots. So I was like, how does that happen? What's the math behind that? And so my belief is that the subconscious brain takes in all the information that your senses throw at it, and it saw and heard everything, but your conscious brain only registers certain things. Right, so the discussion last night was when you buy a blue car or a certain kind of car, you all of a sudden start seeing that car everywhere. Well, they were there before, but it never triggered in your actual conscious brain to remember or see or look at those things. So anyway, the subconscious has all this information and data, but it doesn't have any use for it, so you don't know that you saw it. But so let's just pick Target. I want a close parking spot at Target. I've been to Target 1,000 different times. So I've been there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I've been there at 10 o'clock in the morning. I've been there at 6 o'clock. I've been there at all times. And so my subconscious brain, when I say those things and repeat to it, it starts making suggestions like, go there at 6, right? Because it knows when the close parking spots are usually available. And if I follow that intuition, then the close parking spots just appear, and it seemed to do it by, just sheer magic. Trusting that intuition, when the subconscious talks, you listen. So there you go.
There you go.
Well, we've talked about it in terms of money. You mentioned your accountant. I think that's such an easy way for people to kind of jump in. That was one of the first conversations we had, was the parking spot conversation, and then we talked finance. And it's easy because it's measurable, especially for those logical, analytical minds, to go, we talked about there's a certain level of money that you can't believe, you think is impossible. And then that's your threshold. And then up till that point, you're continuing to work your faith. So, if you can believe for $100, well, then you go out and go ahead and do the $100 thing. But if 1,000's too much, and we went back and forth on that. But I think money might be actually a real gateway into this for some people to really start to develop that muscle of faith and believing for something.
So my story, and it sounds incredulous, and I even debated whether I would talk about it, but it is truly my, that moment of, you really can do this. So one day I was just at home. I don't always go out to get the mail. It's just not a high priority for me. But I was thinking about this, and I was thinking, I can manifest money. I can do this. I can do this, and I'm going to do this. So walk out to the mailbox, and as God is my witness, there was a check for $1,200 because over a period of time, I had overpaid a particular bill and I was being reimbursed for it. And I was just stunned. I mean, truly stunned. And I know people are out there there will be skeptics out there saying that,
yeah, bet you can't do it again.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
and so
coincidence.
where
Yeah.
the story is that I did it again. Like a month later, there was another $200 that came because that was when the final settlement came in. And but coming back to your idea of the limiting factor and how much money is too much, I'm afraid to do it again. I can't bring myself to walk out to that the mailbox because I'm afraid it won't work the next time. And I've just got myself psyched out of it at this point. I still do lots of visualization and really my focus is on my work life and
Sure.
the other things in my life and less on finances and other things. But I would take any polygraph that story is true. I would swear on whatever oath somebody wanted me to do. I may not remember the exact dollar amounts, but it was in the neighborhood of $1,500 over the course of a month.
That you conjured. That's
And
awesome.
I've never done it another time. But on those 2 days, it happened.
You want to hear a funny one? I did something similar where I would say checks and checks and checks, and I just kept repeating
I've been
it.
doing that lately.
Have you really?
When you told me that story.
Well, this is a funny one because I made it happen a couple times, and then I got kind of cocky with it, and I kept doing it. And what ended up happening was on our billing program, somehow somebody changed the billing address to my home address. So all of my company's accounts receivable came in, and there were hundreds of checks that showed up, and I was like, that's not fair, you tricked me.
Okay, so I really wanted a pony, and so I'm trying to manifest a pony, and I apparently have gotten pretty good at this because we got 4 ponies and a mule when we rescued them, and so I need to dial it back sometimes too.
It works too well now.
That's funny. Yeah, it's one of those things though. Like because of my vantage point, I go to Scripture and I think of, when Jesus heals somebody, he says, "Your faith has made you well." And we have those same stories amongst people of faith where they donated to a charity or they gave some money to church, and then they all the while they had this need at home they were believing for, and then they go home and there's a check in the mail or somebody supplies that sort of stuff. We wouldn't use similar type of language, but it's the same faith
exactly
mechanism
right.
and muscle. Yeah.
If you see even the rituals that go into it, they repeating it and really programming your brain and being sure of it, and
putting
being able to
scriptures
walk
on your
through
mirror
faith
and
about
stuff like all
Absolutely.
that. We've totally
Vision
talked
boards.
about.
You do any of that stuff?
I haven't done vision boards,
Okay.
but I believe in them.
Okay.
And I know
Yeah.
other people who have done them and used them very successfully. I tend to be more just sit and try to visualize. And really, as I'm centering myself, especially in the morning, getting up and trying to put out what I want to attract to myself for the day.
People who are good at meditations are good at creating such a calm and quiet that their brains are able to do a little bit more of that visualization internally. I got one of those 1,000 miles an hour brains where if I go to meditate, I think of something I have to do, and I have to, I don't meditate very long if I meditate at all. And that's something I should probably learn how to do.
The shower
Yes.
for most people is the best spot because for whatever reason you're in something that's routine, right? You wash almost the same order every time, and you're in a space where your brain is not. You're doing a rote thing. You're kind of enjoying the hot or cold water depending on what type of shower you take, and so that people say all the time, "Oh, I have the best ideas in the shower." Well, why? Because you're fully relaxed in that spot. I often tell people who struggle with praying or meditating on the Word of God or any of that stuff to keep a notepad next to them, and as they have those ideas or thoughts, just write them down so that way you're not throwing them away, but just release them and then continue to focus on that which you were focusing on. When my wife's grandfather passed away, we found his Bible, and he had a second grade education, barely spoke any English, Italian guy, and in his Bible he had this bookmark, and on the bookmark he had wrote like, "Pray for the world, pray for this person, God heal this person, I need milk." It was literally like it was total train of thought. And what was he doing? Well, that idea popped in my head, and I don't want it to distract me. Let's get rid of it. And so I've encouraged other people with that struggle to kind of quiet in that space to do the same thing.
Shower ideas have cost me so much money. They're so terrible. On the rating system, I think it's so good, and I come out
Best
of it.
sermons, shower. That's so funny.
So when you were doing the building, okay, and you're driving past it, and you're getting your brain centered, what was your ritual going into it? Like, how often did you do it, and how did you keep that so clear?
I drive by that building every day. it started years before we actually bought the building. I mean, it wasn't years and years before we actually bought the building. I would not say that I am so disciplined that I did it every day or every time I drove by the building, but once it started to turn into a real project, I got much more disciplined about it, and really started to make it a point of seeing the building build out and companies using it and traffic in and out of it. So early on, I don't know, maybe once or twice a month, but as it started to become more real, it did become much more a part of my routine. And I would look forward to driving by it, and as I would drive by it, I would, I had a little prayer that I would say, and years later, it is still coming true. So
that's so cool. My wife and I just had an offer accepted on a house. We're going to buy a new house, and we have to sell our house. And when we left your house last night, we drove past what's going to be our new house, and it's all contingent right now. And the nerves are up, and hopefully we sell and all that. But when we drove by, like we were saying to the kids, like, this is going to be our new house. And even today, talking with our realtor, like, what's our strategy? Like, we need to be aggressive. We need to sell this, etc. But there's like I kept saying to my wife, like, the right buyer is going to come to us. Like, they're going to be able to figure this out. They're going to overlook the one or two things that everybody, doesn't like this and doesn't like that. They're going to overlook that. This is their house. And it's a new exercise for me, because we've only been doing really 6-8 months. We've been kind of talking this way and navigating this, and I've been translating it for myself into kind of faith terms. But with this house, I've really gotten to flex this muscle, and it's been a lot of fun. So hearing you talk about the building when we drove by the house, and then my wife and I sat up till God knows when, 1 a.m. last night, looking at the same 31 pictures that were on the site, and the 2 or 3 videos we took, we, going through like, oh, we'll put this picture there, or maybe we could put a bookshelf there, and you're already starting to picture this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's what Barb said, is setting your frequencies
Yep.
so that they're aligned with whatever you got focus on.
100%.
So going back to your idea about the subconscious,
Yeah.
part of what I believe really plays into this, and I think it is subconscious, is it's not just your thoughts about the parking lot clearly. It is what you bring to the world. And if you bring a negative attitude about life, a negative attitude about yourself, if you are constantly angry and feeding that demon of negative thoughts and negative expectations and nothing good ever happens to me, if that's your mindset on a day-to-day basis, spending 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day driving by the building and trying to visualize it, probably not going to get you to where you need to be.
Exactly.
You'll
disarm it.
you really have to work on those subconscious thoughts, your attitudes about life, yourself, and putting out a more positive, a more positive energy to be truly new agey there, because you're going to get back what you're putting out.
Exactly.
And you just can't separate your conscious thoughts from your subconscious thoughts and think that the universe is listening to everything at the same frequency. It's very important, and I don't think that means you can't. I mean, I'm snarky and sarcastic and 1,000 other things. I have no illusions that I am a perfect person,
Sure.
but at the end of the day, I think I try to balance those things between, with good karma and rescuing ponies, because I need to build up some extra energy in the good karma department. The sum has got to be greater than the whole, the parts there. You've got to really, really try to be that positive person.
So I ask him this all the time. How do you help your employees or other business owners that you're working with? Because you meet that person that has 6 problems for every one of your solutions, right? You have that person, and the sky's always falling. Everything's always bad. How do you help them? Obviously, you're going to try and project certain things, but at some level, Eeyore sometimes comes to work. How do you help them move past that and move into a space that's is going to be better for them, but you're having to work with them? And sometimes they're really detail-oriented people. They mean well, and they save you a lot of headaches sometimes, even though they create some for you because they see problems. I know as a visionary, I'm like, well, I see 5 years down the road, and but I'm not thinking about this, and this, and sometimes they go,
what about this?
This is going to be a hurdle. And I'm like, just get on board. We're going that way, okay? But how do you help them over that hurdle?
Oh, that's probably the hardest question to answer in terms of getting other people into this flow. And again, I hate to be dismissive, but if somebody's just not ready to be there, if they're living in that no, I don't know that you're getting them into the yes until something happens to help them make that shift.
That's good.
I'd like to think that there are people on the fringes that I think you can help get over that hurdle, but if they're firmly in that space where they don't believe it can happen and they are just looking to throw up problems, issues, complaints, they're a long way from being ready to do this.
And they're doing the opposite of what you're doing, where they're programming why it can't be done, and they're getting what they put out there, which is it can't be done, and they're totally right about it. The analogy with runners is that you want to be a runner, so you picture a runner and everything that they do, and you align your frequency with everything that runner that you can picture is doing. It works the other way around. If you want to be a slob and do everything a slob does, you will be a slob, no matter what. It's testable. There's a couple times when either traffic lights or grocery stores. I always have these bad times in retail establishments for some reason. Because all it'll take is some doubt that pops in my head and say, I always get all the red lights. And what do you think happens? All the red lights, just as far as the eye can see. And same thing with the long grocery store lines or Walmart lines and stuff like that too.
Are you the guy that counts? You get in the line with 12 and you count?
Oh, yeah.
You count the person in front of you?
I'll call them out.
13. 13. See ya. Wrong line, buddy.
But they'll always justify, because if they have like closer related stuff.
Come on. They're basically the same thing, Joe. So rude.
Oh, too funny.
That's awesome. At the Youngstown Business Incubator, we'll switch a little bit of gears here. What do you visualize for the future? What kind of plans do you have? What are you looking to attract? What kind of business owners? What are you looking for?
Oh, lots of different things right now. So because we've been talking about the building, the current space that we have, we were only able to renovate about 65% of the building with the first tranche of funding. All of that is currently leased or will be soon, and we need to build out the rest of the building. So we're working on federal funding for that, and we'll need to figure out the rest of the local funding, but we're getting ready to start that process as well.
Putting that out there right now,
Yeah,
right?
we're putting it out there right now. We have our tagline for the last 2 years has been elevating every entrepreneur. We want to work more and more with all businesses, not just those within our funding silos. So we have funding to work with technology businesses. We've got some funding to work with women. We've got a minority business assistance center. We want to break down those walls and just be able to be a resource. And so, ironically, I hadn't really thought about this, but last spring, earlier this year, we submitted a program request called Elevating Every Entrepreneur, and we're now working on the tweaking the submission to get that funded. So that will remove some of those barriers and allow us to do the broader spectrum. And we're also looking to see how COVID can play a role in changing the dynamics of who's interested in being in the Mahoning Valley. We live now in a different world than we did a year ago, and there are clearly going to be opportunities for companies, for places in the Midwest to attract businesses that still need that physical space or want a physical space, assist them in rebuilding teams here and taking advantage of the great quality of life we have, the low cost of living, everything that we have. I think there's opportunities there for us to really have an impact that we have never been able to have. We've attracted onesies, twosies to the Mahoning Valley. We've got some really good stories, But I think that there could be a much larger story coming out of that.
Yeah.
I got another YBI question for you. I was reading the stuff with Tim Ryan about securing. It's not out of committee yet. I don't think it's been voted on yet, but there's a part for additive manufacturing in there. So I didn't get to see much details. Do you know any more about what that piece is about?
Well, I think that there's actually a couple different pieces, but you're playing right into my hand here. So
That's what we do. Put it up on the tee.
So this is yet another true story. So when America Makes came to Youngstown, I guess I'd never tell you a lie. Well, this is another story about manifesting or law of attraction. When America Makes came to town, we knew we had to redefine ourselves if we were going to take advantage of the opportunity and to allow America Makes to really make a difference. We needed to become more. So we developed a program to support entrepreneurship and additive manufacturing, and that is a great program. We're very proud of it, but we even further redefined ourselves and started to find ways to work with existing businesses to help them adopt additive manufacturing into their operations. And one of the areas that we have truly developed great expertise in is using additive for metal casting. So you can 3D print the sand cores that are integrated into thousands of different designs, hydraulic lifts, pumps, you name it. You're going to, if it's an industrial application, there's a pretty good chance that metal casting touches it somewhere. Well, for years, my password for our CRM was sand cores. Every time I went into it, it was sand cores. Over and over and over again. And that has become truly the backbone of the work that we do. We've done projects with Goodyear, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Valeric locally.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so coming back to your question, one of the projects that was funded through Congressman Ryan's office is with our initial partners on that, YSU, and the University of Northern Iowa. And we're just thrilled to be a part of it. But we have built really deep expertise in this particular niche, and we looking forward to the opportunity to doing even more, and really glad to see YSU and UNI being able to take that to the next step.
It's cool. It's none of it's luck. It's all been predetermined. I love that. I love that. And do you share how with the rest of the team that element of you and how you like the password story? Does anybody know that?
No, because I never even thought about it until this moment. I
Gotcha.
mean, it was just when you asked the question, it dawned on me that I had done that. But it's been lots of those little stories. When I started working at the chamber, Herman Moss from General Motors was my chairman of one of my committees, and he recognized that I struggled with change, and I truly did struggle with change. I didn't like anything to change. And so I just, at the time, your cell phone could program in whatever you wanted on the flip of it, and so I programmed in change is good, and I put change is good lots of different places. And I know that's a little different than manifesting. That's more of a personal mantra, but I think that it's just important to repeat those things and remind yourself of them. And I'd say I'm a very different person now because I find those ways to just remind myself of what lessons do I need to learn right now.
I think so, at a certain point, if you use that and keep repeating it, your conscious brain gives up on it, and because it'll say you like change, and it'll say no, you don't, and it'll keep doing that until it finally says fine. I like change.
I give up. I give in. That's awesome.
So I mean, it's just a small thing, but I'm so much more at ease with it that it makes everything else easier. It may not make sense to somebody who's never really struggled with it, but if you've struggled with change in any way, shape, or form, it can really stop you.
Heck yeah.
It can stop you dead in your tracks. It was a lesson I definitely had to learn.
It's something on the DISC assessment. I remember 70% of people hate change. Like 7 in 10. So
70% of people hate me then.
But when you think about that, whether you're talking business, whether you're talking wearing masks, whether you're talking any of those things, 70% of the population naturally have a risk-averse, negative pullback. and it's going to take the early adopters. It's going to take people willing to push things in the foreground to make anything move forward, because everybody else would still have a rotary dial phone if we didn't make
That's right.
that. So those things all press forward. Well, this has been awesome. How can people get a hold of you or Youngstown Business Incubator, or if they want to connect or they want to donate something or they want to do something, how could they get involved?
We have a great website. It's www.ybi.org. If somebody has an idea for a business or a problem with their business, I'd suggest they go through the website as their first line of defense. We do have great social media, a Facebook page. All of our information gets put out through Facebook and other mechanisms too, but Facebook is our go-to. Seems to be where most of the population still congregates.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to talk to me personally, I'm certainly open to that as well. I would say the best way of getting a hold of me is email, and it's pretty easy. Barb Ewing is just B-Ewing, B-E-W-I-N-G, @ybi.org. And I so appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely.
It was a
This
lot
is
of fun.
great.
Awesome. This is wonderful. Thank
Yeah,
you for being
thank
on the
you.
show.
All right. See you guys next show. We'll be back on what is
Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday of next week. All right.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone.